Well, hello everyone. You're listening to another new episode of NMPC Plus. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. My name is Josh. I am the worship pastor at New Mercy Palisades Church, little old church plant that could, in Palisades Park, New Jersey. I am joined, we're going to do it this way. I am joined over there on the far side of the room by Pastor Key. Hello, Pastor Key.
Finally, I get to go first.
Don't be jealous. Let's go Yankees.
And I am joined by Pastor Bobe next. Hello, Pastor Bobe.
Hello.
And I am joined, that unfamiliar voice that everyone has heard, I am joined by Pastor Christyne. Hello, Pastor Christyne.
What up? What up?
We have a family episode, ladies and gentlemen. It's been about 14 seconds, and it's already gone off the rails a little bit. But you know what? Whatever kind of brings the tension up a little. And so, Pastor Christyne, we're so glad to have you here.
Woo, thanks for having me.
I wondered if for those of us that are unfamiliar, if you could just do us a really quick thing. Just tell us where you're from, tell us where you're serving, tell us a little bit about your life, and then we'll sort of take it from there.
Okay. Bios are so hard. Okay. My name is Christyne.
Don't be nervous.
Okay, I am a little. My name is Christyne. I am from Bergenfield, New Jersey, currently. It's near Teaneck. I don't know why, but no one knows when I say Bergenfield.
Sure.
I serve at Restore Fellowship, which is the EM at PCNJ.
That's the Presbyterian Church of New Jersey.
Yes.
Yes.
And
you got a baby.
I do.
And a husband.
Yeah. I'm a mother and
Thank
a
you,
wife.
Pastor Bobe, for doing Pastor Christyne's bio.
I used to be a youth pastor. I do miss youth ministry, but I am co-pastoring with my husband right now for the EM. So that's been interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And for those of us that are still a little bit curious about what's happening here, if you are a frequent listener to the podcast, you would have noticed that the episode right before this one, we had Pastor Christyne spoke. That is because our fearless leader over there has been out for a little while with Rona. And so maybe before we get to the message, as we usually do, I just got to ask, Pastor Key, what's up? How you doing over there? How you doing on the far side of the table?
Oh, man.
How was the time away?
It was hard in the beginning. Felt like a flu.
Sure.
But then towards the end, I wanted to do stuff, but, still testing positive, so need to be a little bit careful around people. And but I'm tired still, I realized. Today, after I picked up my wife from the airport, she just came back from Korea, I had to take a nap. I was so tired. And I feel like I need to take more naps now just to recover. But I'm fine, testing negative for a few days already now, so I feel good.
You're still testing?
Long,
No.
bated breath of
But you don't
applause.
think...
When I finally tested negative, I just stopped taking tests.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
That's
say.
what I mean.
Sure.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Wait, but you don't think that's age?
What?
That you got a nap? Wait, can I say
Shots
that?
fired. Shots fired, ladies and gentlemen. Shots fired. Shots fired.
That's what's
Like
up,
that
man.
just-
That's right.
Trust that Josh will do a great job
Oh, yeah.
editing.
I'm not going to touch this a single second of this.
Though I did sleep more, I think, when I was younger. Isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't it? As you get older, you can't sleep as much.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it is?
No,
Oh,
COVID
really?
will wipe you out,
Yeah,
man.
well,
It's going
COVID
to take
wiped me
like
out.
another month.
I mean, you should know, Christyne.
Huh?
You had COVID 4 times.
You did?
Or 3 times.
3 times.
Oh my goodness.
3 times?
Yeah, 3 times.
Oh my gosh.
Dude.
PK texted me when he got COVID. And he blamed me.
For you, did you even...
It was like 3 months ago.
Yeah, you guys hadn't seen each other in 3 months, and he's still blaming
I
you.
gave him the dust.
Well, it is good to have you back, Pastor
be
Key.
back. Thank you.
Regardless, we
Yes.
missed you while you were away.
I miss you guys.
Yeah, and this is in some ways this is a bit of a reunion.
Yeah.
Kind of a reunion of sorts, because the three of us, Pastor Christyne and your husband, who you're co-pastoring with, as you mentioned, we went out to the Eco National Gathering
Yes.
together out in sunny Newport Beach, California. And I gotta say, I'm not gonna go to you guys yet, because I'm gonna say I've never seen a collection of just D-Gen pastors. I mean, I haven't seen that group of D-Gen pastors since my own friend group of D-Gen pastors. I mean, when we were together, it was hard to believe.
Wait, D-Gen?
Degenerate.
Degenerate.
Yeah.
I was like, does he really mean degenerate?
Yeah, I mean it.
Were we?
I honestly,
One
like,
of us was.
when we were in the
you.
car together, we weren't 5 pastors in a car. We were just 5 people. Pastor Key was the dad,
Yeah,
and we
he
were
was.
all of his rowdy little children in the back, just screaming at him from the back and everything.
Are we there yet? Are we almost there?
Yeah.
Are you hungry? I'm hungry.
Yeah. But to that end, that trip, I don't know that we ever got to speak separately or personally about it, but like, how was that trip for you? I mean, we kind of debriefed afterwards, and we just basically said, like, aside from the gathering, the national gathering, like, we just had so much fun together, right? That was like, for me, that was about 51% of why I had such a good time out there. But for you and your husband, or maybe just for you personally, like, how was that trip after a couple months of debrief?
I don't know. PK made it a little boring. Just kidding. But
What is happening? I didn't say anything.
no, it was great.
Yeah.
If my husband and I had to go ourselves, I think it would have been a totally different trip.
Sure.
So just having you guys there, and having PK there also influenced our decision to get ordained
Yes.
with the denomination
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
to start it. But it was just fun.
Yeah.
I like that we just had good convo.
Yeah.
Just got to joke around.
Yeah. And now that I have everyone here, what was your guys' favorite part about that trip?
The van.
The van?
The
Yeah.
times in the van, I
The
think.
minivan.
Oh, no. Korean barbecue.
Yeah.
Oh.
The
Yes.
knob.
Yes.
The knob is my favorite.
My gosh.
No, the first thing that comes to mind is just Boba's face watching Bachelor. The Bachelor. She didn't listen
It
to.
came out!
She didn't listen to any of us. She was just like.
But it was hard to ignore it. We had surround sound.
Wait.
Bachelor.
Hang on. Can somebody give the backstory, the context for what we're talking about right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we went out for drinks after everything was over, after dinner. And then we're just sitting there. And all of a sudden, it's 9 o'clock. And they start changing all of the
That's right.
TVs to Bachelor. Every single one of them.
Yep.
And we had surround sound Bachelor. So I don't watch The Bachelor.
Yeah.
But I couldn't help but watch it because it was it was something else. And I just got so sucked in.
Yeah.
And I got really invested in like 15 seconds. Yeah.
Guys, when I tell you how disengaged Pastor Bobe was from our group and how just absolutely gobsmacked, eyes glued to the TVs that she was, we'd be like talking about like, yeah, I mean, that's just the trouble of ministry, Pastor Christyne. What about you, Bobe? She's over there like this. She's just looking at the TV like this.
With her mouth open. That's what I remember.
That's my concentrating phase.
At a few points, she would interrupt us by going, "What? What?
Oh yeah.
What's going on
And
right
then
now?
you'll be like, it's not real, man.
He kept going, gotcha, gotcha. It's fake in Korean. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about the Bachelorette bar, or the Bachelor. It was.
Yeah, it was a Bachelor.
That's
The
how I know
Bachelor
it's
bar.
California, though.
Yeah.
That The Bachelor was on surround sound.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Honestly, it was like the Super Bowl was on, and like that's all the TVs.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And no one complained.
Yeah.
No, even the waiters and waitresses, they didn't come to us.
Yeah, they were watching The Bachelor. I was actually watching one of them watch The Bachelor the whole time. Oh man.
Yeah.
What about for you guys? What were your some of your highlights from that trip?
Mine is the knob.
The knob.
When the waitress stole the knob. from
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
We told that story before. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that was fun.
Hmm.
I will remember that forever.
Yes.
In many sermons, I will use that illustration for something.
You're just gonna work it in somehow.
Somehow.
If you don't know what we're talking about, go back a few episodes.
Yeah.
Go back to like January, and you'll know what we're talking about.
Oh yeah. That's right.
Yeah, that was a really great time. A lot has happened since then, though. You and your husband switching to eco. Actually, to that end, I recently, just this past week, I finally got my email with packets to switch my ordination from
Oh, wow.
ECA to eco.
Oh, awesome.
So that's also something that I'm going to be working on as well. So
Nice.
Yeah,
hey,
we're doing it together.
yeah. But I think the process is slightly different.
Okay.
But yeah, for sure. Like at the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
joining eco together. So
Do you know if you have to go on the retreats and stuff?
I don't think that I do. Partly because I'm already ordained and
Yeah.
I'm just joining eco as an ordained pastor, and so it is slightly amended in that way. But I mean, it's still like a rigorous process, which I appreciate. I appreciate that like eco takes it so seriously, regardless of whether you're coming from. Like, you know, we want to make sure that we do this right and with intentionality and all that stuff. So it's still a rigorous process, but not as rigorous as going like straight, you know,
Yeah.
into it. So yeah.
Wow.
When is your assessment due? I didn't write it yet.
I think just ASAP.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Yeah.
You put your entire eco life on this man's shoulders.
Yeah.
I already have some ideas of when I'm right.
I was like, can you do my assessment? He texted me, he's like, my assessment, she's a potty mouth. I don't think I'm that bad.
No, you're not.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my friend.
Yeah.
Whatever you guys think.
We're having fun here, guys. I swear we're all friends. People are gonna be watching this and be like, what's wrong with them? Anyway, let's just get right into it. Pastor Christyne, thank you for joining us this past Sunday. I know that honestly, like, even though it's the week after Easter, like there's still a lot for a pastor to do on a Sunday.
Yeah.
On top of that, you have like your husband, you have your son that you have to look out for and look after. You have a ministry to co-pastor with. And so we really don't take it for granted the fact that you came and joined us, right? It was wonderful to see you, but you know, as soon as the message was done, I saw you race out of there and I totally understood it, you know? But you joined us and you gave the message this past Sunday. And usually what we like to do for our guest speakers is I just ask them to give us a little bit of a rundown, kind of like a in their own words, a reminder, a refresher, so that we have a kind of like a launching off point. So could you help us out? Could you give us that refresher again? Maybe a few reminders, some pointers, or maybe some things that still remain and resonate with you even after giving that message?
Yeah, I think I put the title of my sermon as What is Surrender? And I did that based on Romans chapter 12, verses 1 to 2. And let me just move this. Yeah, that true and proper worship is to be a living sacrifice. And you do that by not conforming to the patterns of the world and by renewing your mind, being transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you see God's will is good, pleasing, and perfect. And you know, it was actually back in 2020 where I felt like God really highlighted Hannah and her story to me.
Yeah.
And since then, Like it really felt like he was giving me that name and just her story and her character, and like tell me to like live it out. And so since then, I think God, it's not like I even intentionally tried, but God just kept revealing layers of her story. Because I think a lot of times when we talk about Hannah, it's kind of just, oh, she finds her worth and it's a very happy story. But I think she knew the true meaning of Romans chapter 12, verses 1 to 2. And Romans chapter 12, verse 1 to 2 is also just my life verse. So God's just been speaking to me about that. So the whole sermon was basically how Hannah chose to renew her mind, be transformed by the renewing of her mind, how she chose to stand in truth, how she chose against the patterns of the world. And through that, she saw God's will. Yeah. And his will, you see it in Matthew chapter 1, the genealogy of Jesus. Yeah. She was a big part of that too. Yeah. That's basically my sermon.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of layers to it, and there are a lot of different ways that we can go. Maybe if I can just ask like a nuts and bolts question first. It's something that I like to ask. I've asked these guys, I've asked other guest speakers when they come. But by the way, are you a manuscript person? Are you a bullet point person? Like, what kind of person are you when you put your messages together?
I am a manuscript person.
Word for word, everything?
No, but I also go off on the side.
Sure. Okay. So the manuscript, the things that you put down on the page, and even like, just even being a manuscript person, I know plenty of people that in their manuscripts, they make room to kind of go off and have some room to do that. But, like as someone who prepared the message, did you do sort of everything that you wanted to do in the message? Or were there some things like if you had to do it over again, would you redo some things, or would everything just stay the same?
No, I would definitely redo some things. Yeah. I think I said it in the beginning of the sermon in my intro that I preached on Romans chapter 12, verses 1 to 2 more than a couple of times to my youth, to like preaching class, to even the restore. And so I think there's always new things that God's revealing. And so I would probably add those things.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's just one of those things that I like to ask. Okay, so the message, for those that are unfamiliar, by the way, the MC who usually does the scripture reading, you included two different things, passages of scripture readings. Yeah. And I was the one that had to do it after leading worship. Yeah. Do you know that she put all 20 verses of the passage in there?
You know what? I got so used to youth ministry that they don't really read the Bible. So you make them read the whole thing on Sunday. And then I did that.
Yeah. I mean, that still holds true for maybe like adult congregations. But I'm saying, help a brother out. I was at verse 8 and I was like, we still got 12 verses left, ladies and gentlemen. So
did you read it before you read it there?
A little bit. I skimmed it. Yeah.
No, just because you were running off those names like you knew them.
You know what? You're not the only person to have remarked that. And I take that as I wear that as a great badge of pride.
Yes.
Actually, one of the ways that I try to just get the word in me as I listen to it.
Yes.
And like when you read it's like names like Peninnah, right? And Elkanah, and all these other names that like on the page, like when you're reading, I think I saw this on Instagram once when you're reading, it's like, and the Lord went to, and then he went to, like you do that in your brain, but like you can't do that when you're doing the scripture reading. So one of the ways that I try to get the word in me is I listen to it. By the way, on the Bible app, whoever does the ESV version, the voice, that's God to me.
Oh, no.
Like when I hear God's voice, that's that voice. But yeah, I kind of remembered those things
Oh, that's
from
good.
when I went through the Bible in a year, and so I knew that it was Elkanah, or at the very least, I just subscribed to the way that person said it. I'm not saying that it's right. I don't know like Hebrew, but I said it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, wow, he's rolling them off. I wonder
Yeah.
if he practiced.
Yeah.
But I had a feeling you didn't practice.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, he just got it.
Yeah.
Like Penina would have, if I just read it right off the bat, I would be like
Yeah.
Penina.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or Elkanah.
Yeah. But like, who's to say that what I said was right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know?
wait, is it
just-
Penina or Panina? I think I said it was Panina.
I don't know.
Nah, man, you switched it.
Oh, I did.
You said it one way,
Yeah.
and then you switched it the second time.
Dang.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know.
Oh, I should have looked it up in Hebrew.
Penina.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, good job.
Thank you. I take it. Okay. So honestly, so many places that I want to go, but I don't want to like get lost in the forest just because I want to look at all the trees. If you could, in like one sentence or maybe a couple sentences, like what is the one through line through the entire passage, or like the one or two really big truths that you just like after you give a message like that, you just want like these one or two truths if you had to choose, right? And oftentimes in pastoral ministry, like, you know, we're doing this negotiation with the people that we preach to, because they're not going to remember all 40 minutes of our sermon, right? Like sometimes they're only just going to remember the nuggets. So if you had to, and if you had your own way and you could choose one or a couple phrases to boil down the through line or like the nuggets or like the real deep truths that you want to go deeper in that story, like what are those things for you as the preacher of the message
In this specific sermon?
in this specific sermon?
Oh, I did have this one-liner. I forgot it, so I guess it wasn't good. The main message that I just wanted to give was surrender gives life.
Yeah.
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 I think that was the main thing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and so let's press into that then. Surrender gives life, and this is something that we've talked about before, the three of us. So I would really love a fresh take on that. Oftentimes we talk about surrender, and I remembered you giving a very interesting and kind of fresher take that I've maybe heard about it, heard myself recently, but. Oftentimes we talk about surrender, especially when it comes to the Christian faith, and so much of it is like, are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up? Like, are you willing to die? Are you willing to sell everything that you have and go to a completely different land and just be so uncomfortable and all of that is right because all of that is for the will of the Lord, right? But it didn't seem like that was necessarily where you were taking the idea of surrender. I could be wrong, so please, help me understand here. How does the hearer of your message, if they are still in that place, what do you say to them to try to bring them closer to what you meant by surrender gives life?
Yeah, I actually noticed that change in my preaching and the way I live too. That I used to be very like, oh, you gotta die. You gotta give this up. Are you willing to do it? Are you willing to take that risk? I was very like that. But I think I also noticed that change in me of where that, yes, there is sacrifice, but then there's another side to the gospel. Like, it's not just death. There's also life. And I think I pressed in my life into, okay, what does life look like? What does resurrection life look like? I pressed into that part. And so, I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well, I mean, it doesn't need to necessarily go along those lines, but
I think you are.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
I mean, if you guys could help out and jump in, like, I'm the audience right now. I'm the hearer, and I'm still in the place of, I don't know if I'm ready to surrender and, in your words, enter through the gateway of that new life. I don't know that I'm ready because I'm still so comfortable, or I don't know what it looks like, or I'm doing pretty damn good in my life right now. I'm really comfortable, and I've always wanted to be comfortable. You know, like, I'm still there, right? So in your guys' mind, all three of you guys at this point, like, what do you say to that? What do you say to that person, the one that says, like, listen, I'm just trying to get by here. I go to church because, yeah, I believe that God is real, and yeah, I believe a Christian should be a good person. But what are you talking about with this whole surrender thing, right? So I mean, please, anyone here.
I mean, I like what Christyne was pointing at, in the sense a lot of people see surrender as just, they see the death aspect of surrender.
Yeah.
Right? But Christyne, you're saying that you shifted toward what is the life aspect of that, and it's not just one or the other, it's both, right? And I think I remember that phase in your life when you were all about everybody needs to die to everything. I sort of remember that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Was I like that?
Yeah, you were. There was a lot of drama. I won't go to what all
But
of that
I think
drama
I needed
ended.
that to get to the life side.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But what I also liked about the sermon was the surrender didn't manifest in her having to give up all of her possessions or anything like that. But it was just, a real struggle that she had. And what's so cool, and you really kind of drew this out to me, I didn't notice this before, was she was a real person. She really struggled with kind of her identity as a woman and having children. And so she was crying in tears and prayer. But what her example showed me is even if faithful people can struggle like this, but when she prayed and then she kind of gave up this burden to God, then she was able to eat, and things were much better for her, which just shows me she's a real person who has real struggles, but she also knows in the midst of her struggles she can have real surrender, and that leads to freedom. And I thought that was very cool. Like when you said, she started eating, she was in a much better place after she did that. I was like, oh wow, I never noticed that before. So, and I feel like a lot of times when congregants hear the message about surrender, they're like, oh my God, I gotta give up my house, right? Maybe, and this is on us, the examples we should give is just a next step for them in terms of surrender. Well, what's a thing that they can do? Because if you look at Peter and these other guys, it looks like they give up everything in the beginning, but they still have their occupation, they still have their wives and this and that. But there's an incremental dying to themselves that Jesus kind of took them on, and I don't know, I feel like they're encountering, hey, where are they right now? What's an area that they can surrender, that'll help them take steps toward that ultimate surrender in the end. And sorry, one last thing is, I do think, believe it or not, for people to come to faith, there is a sort of surrender that has to happen, right? There's something in their hearts that says, well, I actually do need a savior. And it might not look like they're giving up too much, but there's a seed there that I think God honors. And this is why even just the idea of belief will save you. When the thief is dying on the cross, he says to Jesus, remember me. And Jesus is like, you will walk with me in paradise. And it's just a little seed of belief, but it's that seed of belief that is the overturning of the seed of rebellion that started from Adam and Eve. And so even little surrenders, it might not feel like it, but there really is stuff happening in your heart. And I would say we might want to highlight some of that so that they see, oh my God, I am on the path to surrender. And so
yeah.
I think when we talk about surrender, I mean, dying to yourself and dying to the things of this world is a big part, because once you come to Christ, you're no longer a citizen of this world. You're a citizen of heaven. So, and that's where you've hopefully opted in for the life that God has for you. And if it's the case that you have to surrender some stuff, I hope that in your reality, you're choosing, like, your reality is God's kingdom over the earth, like the world that is going to fade away. And I think one of the things, if I remember correctly, one of the things you mentioned in your message was how in prayer, Hannah received God's purpose for this baby. Right? This is something she wanted for so long. She was crying so hard that people thought she was drunk, right? Like, this baby is so precious. But why would you surrender the most precious thing you've wanted for years and years and years, that's going to bring you status, that's going to bring you all these things, and say, Lord, I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna give this baby to you.
Yeah.
Why would you say that? It's because in her prayers, her heart has drawn close to the Lord. And I think that's the piece to surrender. If you surrender on your own, I think it's very limiting because there's only so much we can continue to give up.
Right.
At one point, it just becomes legalistic. But I think when you give up or when you surrender because you see the heart of God, because God shared his heart with you, that's a totally different type of surrender that actually gives life the way Hannah received life after she surrendered. So I think that's a very important piece, that drawing near to the Lord, because if you don't have the heart of God, it's so hard. It's so hard. And so we're so comfortable, like if I'm talking to the person that
Sure.
that you mentioned before, like, you can stay comfortable. You could. But is Jesus the leader of your life? Or are you the leader of your life? When I talk to the kids, I always say, yeah, Jesus is the savior of the world, blah, blah, blah. But when I start telling them, like, about the gospel, like, kind of like an altar call, not really, but just reiterating the gospel to them, I always say it's that we put Jesus as the leader of our life, that he's the leader of our life, not just the savior. That has to be true for adults too. So, yeah.
I really think surrender, like, it really benefits you.
Yeah.
You're giving up false self, false identities, false securities that just won't last for something that'll last.
Yeah.
And I did this for my youth. I had a whole illustration about a handball. Handballs are hard to find in New Jersey, but in New York there are a lot of handball courts.
Nobody plays handball.
It's crazy. I loved handball. But anyway, I found the handball in Modell's, and I told them, like, you were made to bounce, but the world, what people say, like, with all that, labels come on. So I started covering it with Play-Doh, and I was like, and then you start to lose your true self, your true purpose. And you can't bounce it anymore because it's covered in Play-Doh. So when you're surrendering, you're giving up that Play-Doh.
Sure.
The false things that have made you.
Yeah.
And then once you surrender, you can bounce again. And to me, surrender it's hard. I get it. But it benefits you in the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that illustration.
That's pretty fantastic.
I'm gonna use it. I won't give credit.
Copyright.
But I will use it.
You don't even know what a handball is.
I don't actually.
What makes a handball different from a nut, like a...
Is it a sport?
It is.
I'm kidding. I was playing.
Yeah, we had handball teams and stuff.
Yeah. Very popular in Korea, actually. Handball.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Anyway.
All right. Okay. I think I hear you. I'm still the audience now. Okay. I think I hear you. That old phrase comes to mind: if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, must be a duck, right? Okay. Maybe I get it. Maybe I am starting to, at the very least, want to understand what you're saying. So then, how about this? What are the marks? What are the signs of a surrendered life? Right? Because it might also be the case that we want to live surrendered lives. We just don't know exactly what it looks like beyond the extremes that we've heard either in Christian media or testimonies that we've heard around the world, or things that pop up on our YouTube, on our Instagram, right? Like we know these crazy stories of God doing wild things, 100 million people saved by the end of this decade, and we know like people getting up out of their wheelchairs, and we know like people just throwing down their crutches because they don't need them anymore because of a pastor who lived a surrendered life and is just going by faith. And we know these things of like pastors just, and I always come back to this one. I don't know why it's this one, but it's selling their house, selling everything they have, going on a faith journey with their families across the world and doing these things, right? These are what I know as the signs of a truly surrendered life, okay? Thing is, my mom, she needs me around. And I am trying to provide for my family, and I'm struggling here. So what are the signs, the marks, the things that I can cling to and strive towards now, here, right now, of a surrendered life? Things that, I'm not forsaking those extreme examples. I'm saying like, are there stepping stones? Are there gradations? Are there, can I graduate from here to this place and then, eventually get there? Like, well, like what are those signs right now for the everyday person, everyday believer?
Man, I feel like surrender is an everyday thing, right? So to label a surrendered life is very, like you need to know it's an everyday. Like just because you surrender once and you have this great testimony doesn't mean like you're living a surrendered life.
Right.
You gotta surrender every day, and so I think that's number one. I feel like the fruits of the Spirit kind of marks of a surrendered life, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you see it growing in you.
Yeah. What about you guys? Like, what are some of the marks, the signs of a surrendered life? Like a more surrendered life. I won't say perfectly surrendered, right? But what are the signs of a more surrendered life that help me know that I'm on the right direction?
For me, it's when I have actually surrendered, which is, I don't know if I can succeed at, it's peace. I always find peace. And to what Christyne said is, along with that peace, the way this, the fruit of the Spirit come as a package, right? Along with peace, you start getting joy, peace, and all these other things kind of attached to that. And that's when I know, I feel like, okay, that was a real thing, Yeah, and just a couple things as you guys were talking that came to mind was I do believe there are gradations, right? Because Jesus says, you have been faithful in very little, I will make you, give you more to be responsible.
Yeah, that's
for,
right.
So there's
that.
Right? So I definitely think that's biblical. And I do think it's an everyday thing, actually, to what Christyne said. The analogy that comes to mind is alcoholism, right? Alcoholics have to fight and surrender every day. If you think about it, we're sinaholics, basically. You know what I mean? And on a daily basis, that surrender. And I know it sounds tiresome, right? But the really tiring thing is just capitulating to sin all the time because it's just destroying you, And so yeah, just in those dimensions, I feel like I like those aspects of surrender because those are real. But for me, the real big thing I'm always looking for is peace. And peace, people hear peace and they're like, oh, that's nice. But if you think about it, so many people today struggle with anxiety, struggle with a lack of peace, struggle with dissatisfaction, which is why they're trying to self-medicate with all these, different things. But when I find peace in my heart, I find myself not controlled by these compulsions as much. I find me just being happy, just sitting there, being there, And so peace really is a powerful thing. And that's what I see in a truly surrendered life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's one's ability to come back to like their identity and the heart of the Father. I think somebody who knows the heart of the Father knows how to surrender. Because And that sounds so Christianese, and I didn't want to say it that way, but I don't know how else to put it. It's that nearness and intimacy that even though, like, you know, sometimes we lose our minds because stress gets us, anxiety gets us, we get lost. But I always find that people who live surrendered lives always have an anchor, and it's in that intimate place with the
That's
Lord.
right.
And we also have to remember that surrender looks different for everyone. If God made everybody who was rich give up everything they had and go do something, there won't be nobody to fund the stuff that needs to happen in this world for his kingdom, right? So that's not a call on everyone. And I hope that when you hear stories like that, or when you see like examples like Hannah, who had to give up in what is in our eyes very extraordinary thing, I hope we don't get like stumped by that, because it's as small, it can be as small as like, I don't know, like stop talking smack, you know, that is even surrendering something, right? You're like, that's like surrendering your desire to put somebody down to make yourself feel better, you know, like those types of things too. So I think maybe now that I'm just thinking, like maybe we need a different framework for what surrender is than just like the big things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So then I'm going to press into that for a second then. So then in your mind, what are some of the first thoughts, some of the first like building blocks of that new framework then? Right? Because this is almost exactly what I'm trying to get at too, right? Like throw out that old framework, because also I like to say this, if you're not there, the Lord is not going to call you. Like if you're struggling with just reading your Bible every day, I very highly doubt, seriously doubt, that the Lord is then going to want to use you to stand in front of a hostile crowd to defend the scriptures. Like I have a hard time believing it, but my faith is smaller than others, right? Okay. But so what are the first few little bricks that you'll lay on the foundation of that new framework then of surrender?
Like if I was helping somebody rework their mind around surrender, I think I'd just be like, look, you gotta know Jesus. Bottom line. That's the first thing I would tell them.
Yep.
Because it's not necessarily about, because if you know God's character, then you will kind of know what is going on, you know, with him for you. And so that would be the first thing. I wouldn't even talk about giving up something, whatever. No, get to know Jesus. That's it. And it's not like in the, you know, like, but literally prayer and word. You know, like, you can know God in the word because, you know, the Spirit is alive and the word is alive. But there's something about praying and being in his presence that brings you like so much closer. And unless you know the heart of God, like unless you know who God is and who Jesus is, like not like he's the savior of the world, he's the creator of the earth, not like that, but like God is my father. He is gentle, you know, like Jesus died on the cross. I am so sinful. Like it all works together. So that would be the first, like that would be the first foundational thing that I would make somebody do.
And also surrounding yourself with people who love God and know God that way.
Yes.
Is so helpful.
Yeah. Pastor Key, you had a couple things.
I did a really, exactly what Pastor Bobe was saying. If you think about it, Jesus is what makes surrender compelling.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't trust Jesus, if you don't trust God, it's hard to surrender because you're like, I need to grab onto this to have life. But then when you see what Jesus has to offer, you're like, okay, you know, I want what you got.
Yeah.
You know, and in this way, I feel like surrender, if you don't have the resources to surrender, it's not to will yourself to surrender. If you don't have the resources, you go to Jesus and he'll give you the resources to surrender. And I feel like a lot of times when I see people actually surrender, like maybe like their home or something like that, when you ask them, they're like, oh, it was easy.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
And you're like, no, it's easy because I know what I got. This is nothing. And I'm like, oh my God, you understand Jesus. You know what you have in Jesus. You have the resources to be able to do this in an easy way. And I feel like that, just when Pastor Boy was talking, I'm like, oh my God, that's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this conversation. Just for the sake of trying to hit a few more things in the message, though, I'm going to ask that we just try to get to this next place. The other thing, and I'm blanking on the man's name after I read all the names. Hannah's husband.
Elkanah.
Elkanah. I'm blanking on the name. I'm sorry. Hannah's husband. There's a part in that story that, there's a part of that story that intrigues me. There's a part where Hannah is so in despair. She's just kind of like at the end of herself, and Elkanah. I'm just going to go with Elkanah. It feels more natural in my mouth. Elkanah, at a few points along that story, when you read it, number one, like it says that he'll give one wife her portion of food that it's supposed to go to her, but to Hannah, he gives a double portion, right? And so there's something there. There's some kind of love, favorite, devotion that he gives to Hannah. In another part of that story, you keep reading, he says this one thing to Hannah who's so in despair. He goes, Hannah, ultimately he says, Hannah, why are you so downcast? Am I not worth 10 sons? Right? And the message, as far as I can tell and understand, and just as we work it out, the message is about Hannah and what she had to do to surrender and kind of find new life in the blessing that she received in the birth of Samuel, her son. Okay. But my heart, in another way, like the other part of my heart is like drawn to Elkanah in that moment, right? Like for me, Elkanah is, when we look at a different sphere of life, like we're talking about surrender when it comes to Hannah, but when I look at Elkanah, there is a kind of a longing, a desperation to Elkanah. Hannah is not worth what the other wives might be worth. I apologize for saying it that way, but even to your point, like if in that society women are treated as like property and really like nothing more than child raising people, right? Like in that story, on the surface, Hannah is not worth more in the world's eyes than the wife that gave Elkanah sons, the wife that gave Elkanah descendants, and the wife that was able to provide, even though that wife was the one that was poking and prodding at Hannah for years and years, it says in that story, right? I wonder if there's something there, if there's a truth there, that even though Elkanah, in the world's eyes, like can and might even be applauded for putting Hannah off to the side and disregarding her or whatever, he still looks at her with love. There's still like a huge place in his heart where he gives a double portion to her. He checks in on her all the time, and he confesses his love and asks for whether or not Hannah can even see the love that he gives. He says, "Aren't I worth 10 sons?" You know, that's just one of those parts of that story that really sticks out to me. Of course, Hannah is doing a great and wonderful thing in modeling surrender for us. Yes, she is. But Elkanah in that story is no one to kind of overlook either, right? And I don't know. I just get so moved by not only Hannah, not only Elkanah, but the pair of them together and what they're showing us, right? That a surrendered life can also be a life that while doing the things that look good in the world's eyes, ultimately please the Lord's heart, right? And so, I don't know. Did you guys have any? Was there anything in your message at all about Elkanah or something in your heart? I don't know. Maybe it's just speaking to me.
No, I love that you saw that, because for what I saw with her relationship with Elkanah was, a woman who found her identity apart from her husband, and who stood in that. And so I love that you saw that.
Yeah.
I like both. I like that she was able to find her identity in something besides her husband. I love that her husband loved her, and actually cared, because oftentimes these guys are painted as like, just caricatures, but they actually care about their wives. I will say though, I'm curious if giving the double portion to Hannah may have provoked the bitterness in Penina a little bit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you see that favoritism blowing up in the face of Joseph.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just he's a good guy, but probably not doing it perfectly well.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, it's a human story, which is what I love about this.
Yeah. One more thing, and this is a maybe trickier thing that we kind of talked about in our staff meeting, and we thought like, got to get Christyne on for no other reason than just to be able to talk and to unpack this, right? There was a portion of your message where you even brought it up, like, I'm gonna bring up a touchy subject here. Yeah. And you had talked about the idea of abortion. Now, abortion is one of those things, especially in the culture that we live in today. You say the word and like no one hears anything but what they think about, right? So like, you're saying these truths and you're trying to navigate and weave this storyline or through line through the thing, and you're using a hard thing like abortion and saying even through that you can find something like true to cling on to. And then someone else is going abortion, and like they're only hearing that in their head, right? Especially in the church, right? Like in the church, outside of the church, adjacent to the church, whatever, right? So I'm curious. I don't need you to explain yourself. That's not, because I'm not attacking you here. I'm not asking you to do that. But what I am curious about is the thing that maybe to this conversation, you have to surrender what I'll call the safety net, right? And kind of veer into some of the more choppy waters and bring up something like that. And so when I ask you to help me find the through line of it, please hear me. I'm not asking you to defend yourself or anything, but what I'm more curious in is, especially as a preacher, as someone who also like preaches sometimes, it's like you have to make a very clear decision, but before the Lord. It's like, God, are you sure you want me to bring this up? You said you felt led. I want to know a little bit about what behind that, and ultimately, like, then where you being led to kind of bring up that thing, and how you then, you said okay, and then you crafted a very intentional line through it all. At least, like, that's what I could hear in the moment, right? So help me understand the through line of that part of the message a little bit.
I mean, the intentionality of it was that because it's not my church that I have authority over, I don't take a stance in it, but I do bring it up to shed light on Hannah's part of the story where so I'm like running through my message in my head right now.
Yeah.
It was saying that women had no worth in their society, and I think it was to kind of mention how society has not changed much now too, and so because I think the thought behind it was also like people can't think the Bible is irrelevant sometimes, can't relate. So I think it was kind of like a way to bring it into our society too.
Sure.
That we still deal with it.
Sure.
And abortion is one of the topics where women can be seen as not really the subject matter.
Right.
We don't really see the stories of those people choosing abortion.
Yeah.
But yeah, abortion becomes a topic more than the woman dealing with real stuff.
Yeah. So the person who only hears the word abortion, as you're trying to, if I can take a stab at maybe the through line that you were trying to say, like, so in that message in First Samuel, the idea is that, like, taken wrongly, Hannah's story is about whether or not she can conceive a child. Right?
Yes.
Taken wrongly.
Yes.
Hannah's story is about whether or not she can conceive a child and all of the things that she has to do in order to conceive a child. Okay, so you leave that there and you put that on the table, and then you brought it to a contemporary example where take a really hot button item right now in the culture, like abortion. And taken wrongly, even the church, even people inside the church, well-meaning Christians, to say nothing of red or blue, even well-meaning Christians often wrongly make the conversation of abortion about whether or not it should or should not be done, rather than the actual women who have to make that terrible choice.
Yes. Oh, you're so eloquent.
You know, I like to try. I try my best.
Yeah.
And so, no, this is good that we're pressing into it, right? Because, like, the easy thing to do is to decry and say, like, oh, pastor should never talk about abortion. It's like, but I mean, you were barely talking about the act of it at all. You're just, from what I can tell now, you were just trying to make a contemporary example of how taken wrongly, the true heart, the absolute center of the thing gets lost.
Yes.
In whatever else we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Right?
And the enemy does that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I just want to shed light on that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought, honestly, like, when I heard it, I was in the room and I was like, whoa. What's happening right now? Where is this message going? And then, you know, like,
I think I saw someone walk out.
Okay.
Probably went to the bathroom.
That's probably.
Or it was too cold.
Yeah, that's
was it
right.
cold that day? Oh.
Yeah. It was very. That's right. It was very cold in the auditorium.
I made it colder then. That was such a cold topic.
Yeah. So I just remember going, "Whoa, where's this going right now?" And then I had to, like, snap myself out of that to not be just another person that you're trying to describe, right? The thing that gets lost is, well, what about the people that are having to make this terrible choice, right? Like, and so I'm with you now. I'm locked in.
Yeah.
I'm locked into what's going on there.
Yeah. I was watching from home. I was like, did I make a mistake?
Oh, why did you
PK,
count that?
I would never.
I know, but then I was like, no, but then, that's my initial reaction.
Sure.
Once you hear the word abortion.
Yeah.
True.
And
Yeah,
then I was
you
like,
were where I was.
yeah, and then in my
What's
mind,
happening?
like, oh no, this is Christyne.
Yeah.
I know she's thoughtful, and you weave through it very, very thoughtfully.
Yeah.
And what's great is you didn't comment on necessarily the act itself. You didn't, but you also didn't diminish the importance of the debate. What you did was you humanized it, right? And there's a difference there. People think if you humanize something, you're diminishing. No, you're seeing it in all its robust complexity, which is the way we have to see something if we're going to deal with something well.
Right.
So I really appreciated that because, the label is pro-life, pro-choice, right? Oftentimes pro-life is seen as you only care about the life of the baby. That's not true. I mean, that's a caricature of the pro-life position. But what you're doing is you're shattering that caricature and saying it's about a human being. It's about both lives, right? And then the pro-choice, it's not just about choice. The people who are pro-choice that I know, they care very much about the suffering that these people are going through and this and that. And so, but yeah, the humanizing of the thing is what I really appreciate about what you did. And I hope that more people would thoughtfully do that.
Yeah.
Because they're not even willing to hear these stories. Because, they're evil people. And then, but some people are going in there because they need. It's not that they're getting an abortion; the baby's already dead. You know what I mean? And they need to kind of extract and this and that. And so, I know somebody who works in one of those clinics or volunteers there, and they're like, they call you murder.
Yeah.
But that's not what you were doing in your situation because the baby was dead.
I was like, my baby's already dead. And he was like, oh.
You know what I mean?
They don't know.
Yeah. And so, anyway, sorry. I'm veering it to the controversial.
Yeah, come on.
But
Whatever.
But you know what I mean? I feel like...
12 people can unsubscribe.
It's all on you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm. Everybody knows I'm very much pro-life, right? But over the years, I've come to realize I need to humanize everybody if I'm going to deal with this in a gospel way, in a way that's pleasing to God. When Jesus deals with people who are sinners, he's like, "Oh, you're a sinner." No, he embraces all of them. He deals with the sin, but he does it in such a humanizing way that almost the people who feel their sin being exposed, they're like, "Oh, Jesus loves you so much," and it just doesn't even really matter. You know? So, anyway.
Yeah. Pastor Boba, any thoughts?
I like the way you did it, and I knew it was coming. So I wasn't so like, oh my God. But actually, what I really appreciated was your vulnerability.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I think it's hard to speak about something like this with true wisdom unless you've been either around it or gone through it yourself, some type of process. And I appreciated that because then I think then it could really be taken the wrong way. But there's something that you're sharing with our congregation, and even in that you weren't shy about where you stood or like why you made the decision that you did. And I think it humanized the topic more. I think the problem is when we get so polarizing, you forget. It just becomes an object. It just becomes an object. And I appreciate it. And the whole subject object, that's where I was like, am I lost? Not even like the abortion part. I was like, she's like, I was an English teacher, a major, so subject object. I was like,
Where's my notebook?
My language arts textbook.
But yeah, I guess that's what I meant by God led me, because I could have used a different
Sure.
subject.
That's right.
Right? Like, oh, that women are sexualized on TV, on media. I could have used that, but I think the Lord also wanted to show me that he saw me in my own story. And so, it's a redemptive thing for me too.
I love that because you spoke out of your experience.
Yeah.
And that just makes it all the more real for people. And this whole thing about humanizing the quote-unquote debate, I don't even like using that because it's more than that. But often people don't like it because it makes it harder to deal with. It makes it seem more complex and complicated. But that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Humanizing something should make the debate that much more difficult, and all the more reason why we engage it that much more thoughtfully. So the more humanizing we do, I think the better off we are, even though it seems like it's making it harder. It's when you make it easy that you reduce people and you destroy them.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I just remember texting you, was it well received? And it was mostly with that subject that I was wondering.
Oh, yeah?
You know what? I could tell that's what you were getting at too. But I swear no one has come up to me, or I don't think anyone has come up to us yet about that part of the message or any part of that message. I think who you saw leave, was it the side? Someone was leaving out the side? Yeah, that was the custodian that was turning off the AC. So that's what you saw.
You pissed off the custodian, man. How he's such a nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly,
like,
what must he have been thinking? That's when he chose to walk in. No, that was literally the custodian who was. Shout out to Kenny, by the way. We asked him for so much on Sunday because it was too hot and then it was too cold, and we asked him a bunch of things.
Too hot.
Yeah.
It got too cold.
Yeah. So that's what it was. And so please, I want you to know that I think, number one, I think our group is a little bit more mature than that, to like only hear the one thing and not wrestle through it, and at the very least try to hear what you were saying, right?
That's right.
I think our group as a whole, which is why I love our church, we just try, right? And if we don't understand, I doubt anyone would have come up to any one of us to be like, oh, I can't believe she said the words abortion. But I think they would have just been like, hey, what does she mean by that? Like, that's how I imagine anyone might have come up to us. Still, no one has. And maybe they will. I don't know. But at the end of the day, like, we got your back.
Yeah, if they do, I want you to explain it. You did so well.
Send them to Pastor Josh.
Yes,
Well, let me say this. I'm not... if you're listening, if you're watching, it's worth it to go back and listen to it for yourself, because I think you'll find that if you listen to it yourself and you really try to intentionally hear what's being said, you'll get everything that I just said too. Like, I didn't need to do that, but, you know, just for the sake of talking about it all, right? And the other part of it is, fine, I'll be the one to say the words here on this podcast, and in a small way, I'll join you on that altar that people want to crucify us on, right? Like, fine, like let's both be there together because we just talked about it, right? But at the end of the day, like, listen, we're behind you, we got your back.
Oh, thanks.
And we'll try to dispel any misgivings about what you meant, and just try to bring it closer to that central thing, right?
Yeah, one family.
That's right. Amen.
Right, Dad?
You know, I was reading through your manuscript because she gave it to me afterward.
Yeah.
Because I was making questions. There's a part in the introduction. She wrote, "I'm always grateful for Pastor Key, who still fights for me today. You guys have an amazing pastor."
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Oh, you didn't?
Did you not? You didn't say it.
No, I said
No,
it.
She said it.
She did?
She said it.
Gosh.
Selective hearing here.
Seriously.
I'm sorry.
She might have said it under her breath.
Because I was reading this. I was like, she didn't say that. I can't believe she skipped over
I
that.
did. Play it back, okay, PK?
But I also did say, is he one of my favorite people
Yes,
though?
yes.
I don't think
That's
so.
all I heard. That's all I heard.
The levels are going crazy right now.
But here's what I'll say. I mean, we did have issues on my end in terms of internet,
Yeah.
so parts were skipping.
Oh.
And so maybe that's what I missed. So
It didn't skip for me, though.
I forgive you.
I watched it on the YouTube.
Yeah.
It didn't skip for me.
Yeah, those excuses.
Yeah. What does that say? Listen, I honestly, like, what does that say about the one nice thing that you were trying to say about him? It doesn't get through to him on his end. And it wasn't us, because you clearly heard it.
I heard it.
Some kind of filter going.
It's like it'd be funny if you only put it on the manuscript and you never actually said it.
know.
So he has to go look for it himself.
You put it in there before you sent it to him, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
It's the worst case of gaslighting I've ever seen in my life.
No,
I said it. She said it, Pastor.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, PK, I'm grateful for you.
Okay, fine.
Yes, you witnessed it, everyone. If you're listening, watching, that's what she has said, and we're sticking with that story. Man, it's been a while since we had this much fun on a podcast, honestly. Maybe not since the last time we had a guest and we could kind of be freer and maybe play with the format a little bit, but you know what's awesome? We didn't even need to play with the format. We stuck true to what we always do, but there was life in it, there was wisdom in it, but it was a good time. And I think that's what happens when, like, people who genuinely love the word try to make themselves better through it and try to see Jesus, but like still being who they are, right? Like, I just think that's a natural thing from just loving people and loving the word, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. So. Before we wrap up, we're just about at the end, but I wonder, like, is there anything that you maybe want to share, anything that might be coming up with your church or your ministry, or anything that you want to kind of put out there for people who might be listening, you want them to know about or put out there? I don't know, do you have a podcast of your own? Or I don't know. I'm trying to do my best hosting kind of a thing here.
You have a book coming out?
No, I mean,
Our last guest had a
Dave
book.
and I had a mukbang.
You had a mukbang?
We had a mukbang.
What?
But I do have one thing, NMPC's hiring
Yes.
full time and part time.
Yes. I did not pay her for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're probably gonna have to unpack why eventually.
Yeah.
That's all right. But we are. Apply. That's it. Really?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to pray for our church, that'd be helpful. We're mostly college and young, mid-20s.
Oh, wow.
That they need a lot of prayer. They need a lot of prayer, y'all. So yeah.
Yo, you know what's funny? That's like one of the demographics in our church that we don't exactly have.
Oh,
Like college age, young 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's rough out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Bless you and David.
Yeah. Is that Gen Z? What generation?
Young 20s is Gen Z. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
yeah, they are.
College and young 20s,
Yeah,
Gen
it's
Z.
all A, B, C, D, I.
Gen Z. And then what are teenagers now?
Your children.
Still Gen Z.
Are they still
Oh,
Gen
they
Z?
are?
Paint is still Gen Z.
When does it come back around to Gen Alpha?
Oh, my son is John Alpha.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Alpha, beta, kappa.
What are you, boomer?
I'm the best generation, man.
Sorry.
The greatest generation.
Actually, that's even earlier.
Yeah.
I'm Gen X.
Gen
You're
X.
millennial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All of you are millennial.
Yeah.
We're young millennials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We just made it.
Yeah.
No wonder I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Oh man.
What did he say?
You said it into the mic.
What did he say?
He's like, that's why I'm so tired. You like said it into the mic.
Man,
Pastor
you have to
Keith.
make them go. You have to make them rewind and find it for themselves. Shoot, I might need a nap too after this podcast. Listen, Pastor Christyne, thank you so much. We will, of course, be praying for you, your ministry. But beyond that, we'll be praying for your husband, David. And we'll also be praying for your son,
Ezekiel.
Zeke.
I knew the name. I didn't pause because I forgot for a second. I'm sorry.
Cutest.
I just want to
the
see
the
Yeah.
if you
cutest.
would bring it back.
Yeah.
Ah, he's such
Yeah.
a good baby.
I love
Yeah.
Zeke so much.
I could hang with
He's
him.
so happy.
Yeah. And a mutual friend of ours got married recently, and I
Yes.
happened to hold the little guy.
Yeah.
Best baby in the world. He didn't cry. He was like looking at me like,
Yeah.
best
Goes
baby in
to
the world.
strangers. It scares me.
Well, we'll pray for that. Yeah. Very many blessings on you, your family, your ministry, everything that you put your hands to. Thank you for joining us. Let's go have a delicious dinner.
Yes.
Yeah.
How about that?
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry you all can't come if you're watching or if you're listening, but we do thank you for listening. We do thank you for making us part of your weekly rhythms. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation. I know that I had tons of fun. I know that those two over there had tons of fun. That's
I did too. Thanks for having me.
well, that is all I'm looking forward to. We're going to be back again next week with another new episode, so sit tight. But until then, we hope you are blessed. And this is NMPC Plus signing off for now.